Australian nurses have been side by side with Australian soldiers for more than 100 years, caring for the sick and wounded from land, sea and air. Often carrying out their life-saving work in dangerous conditions, many have also paid the ultimate sacrifice in the line of duty. The earliest recorded presence of Australian nurses caring for wounded men was in the bloody Anglo-Zulu War fought in 1879 between the British Empire and the African Zulu Kingdom. But it was during the First World War of 1914 to 1918 that Australian service nurses would see major conflict, engaged in every major battle from the Western Front to the Middle East. Queensland nurse Grace Wilson was one of them. She arrived on the Greek island of Lemnos with the 3rd Australian General Hospital in August of 1915, at the height of the fighting on the Gallipoli Peninsula. Days before, she had learned of the death of her brother, shot by a Turkish sniper on the very same shores just 3 months earlier. Almost immediately, casualties began to arrive, and the conditions at the crude medical outpost Wilson described as too awful for words. The hospital tents and equipment were delayed for weeks. Sanitation was non-existent.
No equipment whatever. Just laid men on the ground and gave them a drink. Very many badly shattered. All we can do is feed them and dress their wounds. The heat and the flies are terrible.
Within a month, Grace Wilson and her fellow nurses were treating 900 patients at a time. Along with shocking battle injuries, disease was rife. Typhoid, dysentery and cholera. Gangrene was a real problem, and in the colder months, frostbite. But Grace persevered. When she felt the needs of her nurses were overlooked, she didn't hesitate with requests to commanding officers for better equipment or ways to improve the terrible conditions. For her outstanding service, Grace Wilson was awarded the Royal Red Cross. After the guns fell silent, Grace continued to work as a nurse. And at the outbreak of the Second World War, she was appointed Matron-in-Chief of the Australian Army Nursing Service. Today, the battlefield may have changed, but the commitment to saving lives remains the same.
It definitely takes a strong soldier and a certain person to be a medic, to deal with what you have to deal with.
Right lower leg, entry only, nil by exit.
Highly skilled Australian nurses and medics can be found accompanying every Australian military combat or peacekeeping deployment. They are on the front lines of war and medicine.
I actually recall when I first got there and getting my first call out, I kind of actually said to myself, all right, Holly, this is war, game on. So I worked in the Roll 2 medical facility in Taran Count. So every Australian soldier that came in, it was our responsibility to be there to treat them. We could have 4 casualties in a day come through the trauma bay. I mean, lots of different cases that varied from burns to TB, tetanus, IED blast, gunshot wounds. You go through the training in your head, and then to actually see is very confronting. The actual destruction and carnage that came in were things that are in my mind and will stay there for a long time.
My name is Talissa Papamel. I'm a former combat medic and Afghanistan veteran. I was completely obsessed with being the best soldier and the best medic that I could be. It can be quite intense, it can be quite traumatic, it can be quite confronting.
On the front lines of every major conflict since the First World War, both in peacetime and in war, a selfless group of men and women have tirelessly put themselves in harm's way to be there for their mates, comrades and fellow Australians, risking their own lives to save lives.
There was an event that happened, there were 5 fatalities. That was definitely a period that was extremely difficult.
As members of the Australian Defence Force, nurses and medics stand ready to serve wherever the Army, Navy or Air Force are deployed. But their dedication to saving lives also extends to regularly delivering humanitarian assistance and emergency relief to countries ravaged by war or natural disasters, including on home soil. Military nurses and medics work side by side with civilian emergency response units during the recent Australian bushfire season. And for the duration of the current COVID-19 pandemic, Australian military nurses will be providing crucial backup to civilian colleagues.
I believe modern day veterans are the custodians of the Anzacs. And I try to celebrate the freedoms that we enjoy because of people who serve.